Hi, and welcome to Say Grace, Food for Thought and Hospitality. I'm Steve Palmer, and I invite you to join me as we explore the stories behind leaders in the hospitality industry and beyond. Say Grace is a place to reflect, connect, and savor thoughtful narratives. Everyone has a seat at our table. So pull up a chair and let's discover the transformative power of hospitality together. Hey everybody, and welcome to Say Grace. I'm Steve Palmer, your host, where we unpack all things hospitality. I am beyond honored and humbled to have Frank Stitt here today. Welcome, Frank.
Well, certainly. It's great to be with you, Steve.
Thank you. So I'm going to read your bio, and then we'll just kind of get into a conversation.
Okay.
I'm so happy to welcome the legendary chef and author, Frank Stitt, to the podcast today. Frank is the celebrated chef and owner of Highlands Bar Grill, Bottega, Chez Fonfon in Birmingham, Alabama. A winner of multiple James Beard Awards, he has been recognized nationally for transforming Southern cuisine into refined contemporary dining and has brought national attention to Birmingham's culinary scene. An accomplished author and founding member of the Southern Foodways Alliance, Frank has helped to document and preserve the rich food culture of the South, celebrating local farmers, artisans, and culinary traditions that might otherwise be overlooked. Frank is one of the most influential voices in Southern cooking, and it is an honor to have him with me. Garden and Gun magazine calls him the Southern Master. Alabama Heritage says Frank Stitt is the father of Alabama fine dining. Welcome.
Well, it's good to be with you.
Yeah, man. When you hear all of this, even this weekend at SFA, there literally can be no conversation about the Birmingham dining scene without your name mentioned. How does that feel?
Well, sometimes if you stick around long enough, things like that will happen. But, it's, growing up in North Alabama in Coleman, and then being in Birmingham and with the restaurants for the last 40 plus years, it feels good. I love Birmingham. I mean, here we are close to the Pepper Place Farmers Market,
right.
Jones Valley Teaching Farm.
Right.
There's a lot of good going on that has to do with food. And I think that the people of Birmingham, appreciate some quality. And so I feel like it's been a nice ride.
Yeah. And in 1982, so I was thinking about this today. I moved to Charleston, grew up in Atlanta. I moved to Charleston in 1990 and was a part of Magnolia's in those early years. But at that point, Louis Osteen had just opened Louis's Charleston Grill and the Omni. You were really, and I can't think of anybody in Atlanta. I mean, you had Buckhead Life, but they weren't really exploring Southern food. Buckhead Diner didn't open until 1985, Jerry Clascala. Did you have any sense, and I have so many questions about Richard Olney, and how I got to that information may surprise you. Did you have any sense in 1982 that, so in a lot of ways you were the first chef restaurateur, at your scale. There were those, of course, that came before, but did you have any sense that what you were doing was pioneering?
No, we were way too close to it to really think about being pioneering. I do think back on those early days of Louis Osteen bringing a group of Southern chefs together.
The Salute to Southern Chefs was incredible.
The Salute to Southern Chefs, and that really opened the door and kind of brought me in touch with Ben Barker and with Emerald and with, a chef from each of the Southern states. And I think that got the ball rolling for us to have this camaraderie of Southern chefs. And, at that time, I had been inspired by Edna Lewis, Richard Olney.
I was going to mention Edna Lewis, yeah.
And so what I was excited about was taking Southern ingredients, Southern traditions, and weaving it into my love of French country cooking. And that, I started cooking in San Francisco. I was in school at Berkeley studying philosophy, and then started falling in love with French food, French culture, wines. At that time, in the mid-'70s, San Francisco was really exciting. The wine country was just getting going, and it was, and there was Chez Fonfon, and then moving to France, and then bringing that back and saying, hey, let's do a world-class restaurant in Birmingham. And that's where I had family, and so that was just an exciting time for me.
What a beautiful time. I was an advanced somm at one point, and so very much, and I love to study the origin of things.
Yeah.
The 1978 wine tasting, the 76 wine tastings, and those early wines. Were you nervous when you opened?
I don't think so.
Really?
I don't think so. I just. I kind of as a kid, played football. Sports was real important, basketball. And, I think there was a competitive nature and a spirit of let's figure it out, let's make it work, and let's make something of quality. And so I didn't really... didn't have much money. All the used equipment was, and had to get my mom to take a second mortgage out on her house in Coleman, because the banks really wouldn't loan a 27-year-old kid a lot of money. And then got some investors, and so it was, I just assumed we were going to make it work, make it happen.
Hubris, I love it. All the great innovations in life have come from people just taking a chance. Mm-hmm. And was it a hit instantly?
Pretty much.
Okay.
Pretty much. The people of Birmingham soon, I think, recognized this was not a country club, and it was not, a meat and three, in that we were trying to do sophisticated food and quality, but without being fancy. And that's hence the name Bar and Grill. And I was somewhat impressed with Tadich Grill and also Galatoire's. And so I was thinking, well, let's try to bring some sophistication, but without being too fancy. And at that time, if you fancy, nice restaurants had a little bit of a uppity attitude.
Absolutely.
And so I thought, well, let's call it Highlands Bar and Grill, because I love an oyster bar, and I love being able to come in and have a beer or to have a simple meal, but we want to try to push it to this hyper quality level. Yeah.
Backing up a bit, so in the mid-'90s, I studied wine for about a decade, and then, of course, blew up and had to get sober. But I was reading Richard Olney's book on Burgundy. I had not met you. I, of course, knew about Highlands Bar and Grill. And there I find, in the middle of that book, a young guy from Alabama cooking with Richard. How did that all come? I was so fascinated. I've been waiting to ask you this question. Wow. I was like, I'm not going to research it online. I'm just going to ask Frank. How did you come to know Richard Olney?
Wow. Well, thanks to Alice Waters. And so while I was studying at Berkeley, and I had just started cooking the previous year in San Francisco, and I had worked with a Swiss chef, Fritz Leuenberger. And so he took me in as an apprentice, working for free at first, and then I got paid and worked through a number of French restaurants, and then ended up at Chez Fonfon. And it was like the Bible of Richard Olney and Elizabeth David. And so the food that we were doing was so much inspired by Richard's writing. And it was not just the recipes, but it was the philosophy. It was the incredible pursuit of knowledge, of beauty, of great food in his way of writing about French food and cooking. And so I was totally swept away. And it's like hearing Bach for the first time. You know, this is like there is beauty, there is wisdom, there is profoundness here. And so I said, well, Alice, could you write a letter of introduction? I want to go and meet this person. And so I
love this.
He was in London producing the 20-volume plus series, The Good Cook, for Time Life. Mm-hmm. And so he was producing one book. Say one was on poultry, one was on seafood, one was on, And so he and Jeremiah were there in the Time Life studios in Conduit Street, and I knock on the door, and they could use another set of hands to chop the Swiss chard. Yeah. And so I kind of luckily got my foot in the door, and then he needed an assistant a month later at his home in Solis-Tuca. And so I went to see my chef Fritz in Switzerland, and then went to Greece for a month, and then came back to Solis-Tuca. And Richard is kind of eccentric, and he refused to drive. And so I was his helper, his assistant, would prepare lunches, and then he would allow me to go in the cellar to choose wines for lunch. So during this time, he introduced me to Simca Beck and Julia Child, mm-hmm. who were living just 30 miles away, and Place Cassier. And so after I'd worked with Richard, I was able to work with Simca as her assistant at her house just outside Mougins. And so it was, he was recognized by the Julia Childs, by the James Beards as really being the most knowledgeable person. His understanding of history and of food and cooking was just unsurpassed. And he was kind of the guru of food and wine writing in Paris at that time. And so he had all of the access to the great wines, the great wineries.
Sure.
They all knew and loved him. And so I was just so fortunate to be able to be there and work with Richard.
I feel like there's a movie in that, man. An American in Paris writing about French food and wine, and a kid from Alabama. Somebody should make that film.
Well, let me expand on that, because later that year, my girlfriend and I had met this couple, and they needed a house sitter in Paris. So we went to Paris. I got to spend 3 months just walking and looking in restaurants and just going to the museums, and got to be friends with Stephen Spurrier at L'Académie de Vin. Mm-hmm. And so this was the educational wine place.
Right.
And this was, I guess, in hindsight, right after this great tasting of Paris. But Stephen really took me under his wing, and I got to learn and taste all of the crus, say, from Domaine Leflaive. And then
How old were you at this point, Frank?
23, 24.
That's incredible.
Oh, it was so exciting. And so he made arrangements for me to work the vendange at some friend's winery back in Provence. So I hitchhiked from Paris to Vidabon, just east of Aix, and then spent 3 magical weeks, and I met somebody, let me live in their house, and then fell in love with the manager, who was an American woman. But after trying to show off in the vineyards, they allowed me to come into the cellar and be a cellar rat, and so it was just magical.
Someone make a movie about all this. This is incredible. Was there any wine? I mean, you might not be able to, you might say all of them. So you're obviously developing your palate for wine. And before I quit drinking, Burgundy was my great love.
Me too.
I mean, Was there any wines that you remember in those moments?
Sure.
Light bulb moments of, the first time you had a Montrachet?
Sure. Sure. That was... the other thing that Stephen Spurrier did is made an introduction to Jacques Cess at Domaine du Jacques.
Wow.
And so after I finished the Vendange, I hitchhiked back to Burgundy and then met Jacques. He gave me a tour, introduced me to some of his people, and we got to taste there. And so that was just, Domaine du Jacques wines were all about elegance and finesse and subtlety. And so that was just an incredible opportunity. But while I was with Richard, we got to drink really nice wines, really great Bordeaux as well as Burgundies. I mean, he was, best buddies with Aubert de Villaine at Domaine de Romanée-Conti. And in fact, in the early days of Highlands, we had Aubert de Villaine for a wine dinner in the early days of Highlands. Now that's another story. All of the winemaker dinners that we have done over the years.
I heard about them early on. What a story. And I don't know that those kind of stories exist today anymore. I don't know that maybe our industry has gotten so crowded. Do you feel like at the moment in time that was the opening of Highlands Bar and Grill, was it easier to run a restaurant then or harder? And what I mean by that is obviously there probably weren't as many experienced cooks. There wasn't, but there were fewer restaurants, so maybe there was a more sense of acceptance and curiosity.
I don't know. One of the things that I think that the people of Birmingham did support us, but it really took some national press. I think the first big article that broke was in Playboy magazine, and at the time they had a decent food.
They did. Yeah.
And so. And then there was Met Home, and then there was Bon Appetit, and then there was, and so there was, Pat Conroy, and there, but it took some outsiders of Birmingham to say, wow, this place is really special. I mean, it could, it's kind of like, on this, it's out of its league, and so for local people needed to hear that to really say, oh well, maybe we won't go to New Orleans this weekend. Maybe we'll just come and eat here. Yeah,
that's special. What do you remember the opening menu?
No, not really. Okay. No, there was cornbread, and there was quail, and there was, Bill Neal was another influence to me, along with Edna Lewis. And so I certainly was trying to lean into some of our Southern traditions. And, most of the cooks, most of our employees were African Americans. Mm-hmm. And in fact, a lot of those people worked with us for decades, and I think that there was something that we represented, maybe, that people could tell that I would not accept any racist behavior. And that we were going to treat people with respect, and we were going to show people, whether they were a farmer, a dishwasher, or our guest, that there was an honorable sincerity and authenticity. And I think that people picked up on that, if subconsciously or consciously.
I love that. That's it's still groundbreaking, but I love that. Was there a moment when you were in Paris? I feel like I'm all over the place. I could talk about Paris
me too.
For days. Was there a moment when you were in France that you said, okay, I need to go home and I need to open my own place?
Well, I was kind of running low on money. And my sister was getting married. And so as much as I loved France, and I was still kind of dream about spending time living in France.
Yeah.
But I thought, okay, well, let's go back. And so came back to Birmingham, and I taught some cooking classes. I worked in a wine shop, the Grapevine, which is a really good wine shop. I was the sommelier at the Hyatt restaurant on the 17th floor, the tallest building in Birmingham. And I did that for, I don't know, several months. And then I had this idea, well, maybe it'd be cool to live in the Caribbean. And so my girlfriend and I flew into St. Thomas. The next day, I went to a bar and met these people that were having a beer, and they hired me to be the chef of their resort and hired my girlfriend to be the dining room manager. So we worked and lived in Charlotte Amalia for the season. And then we did something kind of fun. We went to explore, and we flew into St. Martin. We were looking for a job crewing. And on the board at the harbor, there was looking for 2 people to help us crew leaving St. Bart's tonight for Antigua. So we jumped on the little plane, go to St. Bart's. I talked somebody into let me go in their dinghy to find the sailboat, and then we sailed the next morning at dawn from St. Bart's to Antigua, which was so cool. We rented a little place for a month, stayed there. Then I thought, great place to visit, but maybe it's time for me to go back to Alabama. And then that's when we came back and started the ball rolling to open the restaurant.
Frank Stitt, the Renaissance man. Boats, pirates, I love it.
St. Bart's was a pirate enclave at the time.
I love it. I love it. When did you feel with Highlands that was there a moment, you mentioned the outside recognition, was there a moment for you that you first started to have a sense that you were influencing sort of a greater movement of Southern food?
Again, that goes back to Charleston and the Salute to Southern Chefs and becoming really dear friends with Ben Barker and Karen. And there was this kind of brotherhood of us that we kind of supported each other. And Lewis, and what Lewis was doing in Pawleys Island before or after?
Before.
Was really cool. And so I think that there was, and what Emerald became the superstar.
Yeah, of course.
And he really took the position of being a chef, of being a cook, into something that had never been before. And so, when I told my father, who was a general surgeon, that I wanted to cook, that was kind of a scary moment because it was not a real, prestigious job.
Was this the late 70s at that point?
Yeah.
Emerald, I remember my first trip there, and he did really elevate the role of chef. I mean, Paul Prudhomme was there, but that's really, thank you for all of that. We owe those before us such a big debt of gratitude. I mean that. I mean, I was a 22-year-old kid when I started working in Charleston, and there was no internet, there was no Top Chef, there was, none of the stuff that, and it was still so many of us in the front of the house. We're doing this till we get a real job. And by 24, I knew serving people was where I wanted to build a life. So then the decision to open Chez Fonfon?
Well, no, Bottega
was next.
In '88, we were talking with Cheryl Morgan yesterday at SFA, and she was talking about our choice of architecture. And, Highlands I found this space, and it was in this building that was built in the early 20s, the Spanish stores. And Five Points was this kind of bohemian area, a little down, certainly not fancy. And then 3 blocks away was the Bottega Favorita building that I would go by every day, and this gorgeous Palladian architecture that's limestone, and it was just such a gorgeous piece of architecture. And then I thought, well, let's do an Italian restaurant here. I didn't want to confuse Highlands Southern Country French with my love of Italian food.
Right.
And so I thought, well, we can do this. And that was 88. And then 2 years later, the landlord said, well, we got these people from Atlanta. They want to take over the spot next to it. And I said, no, don't do that. I'll take that. And that became the cafe. So much more casual and inexpensive. But that building provided the kind of the groundwork for us to make this explore into Italian foods. And then it was 2000 when the building next to Highlands became available. Mm-hmm. The landlord said, well, I got these people from Atlanta. They want to put in a restaurant right next to you. I said, no, don't do that. Let me do it. And that was my opportunity to do my love of French bistro. And so Chez Fonfon and Patrick Dunn from New Orleans, mm-hmm. a wizard, architect, of culinary history. And so I just loved that opportunity of working with Pardis and Patrick to use those French antiques, the tables and the old prints from the 1890s and the tobacco-stained walls that are kind of that smudgy golden color. Yeah. And so Fonfon is just a really a lovely place that I'm crazy about.
I love that. And did Birmingham embrace? Yeah. I'm sure at that point, there was trust, and if Frank Stitt's doing it, it's going to be good.
Well, I don't know. I think you gotta do the work, and you gotta make it good. I think that's something that Pardis and I and our team, we try to do every day. We're there. A lot of other chefs have been able to go to Las Vegas and open up restaurants all over. And we never wanted to do that because I feel like there's a magic when the visionaries are part of the everyday. And when you're kidding around with the delivery guys and,
I love that. Any surprises along that way? Were you surprised pleasantly at the response? Did you always know you wanted to do other things creatively, or did that just kind of happen organically?
That happened, I think, real organically, and also it had to do with some of our staff that wanted more responsibility.
I was going to ask you that. That's great.
And so, Chris Hastings worked with me for a number of years, and then he worked with Bradley out in San Francisco and came back. And so there have been just so many wonderful people that have been chefs that have been my right hand that worked with me for 2 to 5 to 10 years and have gone on, and I'm just so proud of them. But I want to share something with you.
Yeah, please.
For our staff that have been with us for 5 to 10 years, there's 10. The staff that have been with us for 10 to 15 years, there are 9. They're between 15 and 20 years, there are 5. And 20 plus years, there are 10. So,
wow, Frank, that's amazing.
So that's, I think we are kind of a family. It's mom and pop.
Yeah.
It's Pardis and me and, our team.
I love that. But obviously they're there because of how they're treated.
Well, and it's like what you are all about is respecting your staff, trying to help people be able to make a good living.
Yes.
And, I think that our insurance is kind of this Cadillac of insurance that we pay half of an individual and it's, but we do, I think, a lot to be good bosses, to be people that you want to work hard. The work is hard.
The work is hard. And how important do you think that has been in your success?
Oh, I think it's absolutely. It's kind of like the SFA did the story on Goran Avery, Red Dog, he started day one. He was one of the people that came from the Hyatt. There were about 7 people that left the Hyatt to come and help me open Highlands. And these were the front of the house waiters. These were the greatest professional servers you could ever hope for, that had a sense of humor, that had a way of making people feel so welcome. And I think that authenticity, that genuine welcome is the magic. And I think that's
Amen.
Yeah, that's how we've been able to, be successful.
I love that. So Chris Hastings is a buddy of mine too. So was he the first person to leave you to open his own Hot and Hot Fish Club? And I remember eating there, good Lord, sometime in the 90s. It was a long time ago. Was he and how did that feel? How did it feel? Like I've recently had a chef and a front of the house both go and open wildly successful restaurants. Knowing that you are the mentor in that moment, how does that feel?
Well, that was, Chris and I are good friends now, and he's been very successful with his restaurants. But when he came back and worked with me, his plan was to go to Atlanta and open up. And I think that didn't work out. And so when he opened up, just a couple of blocks away, that was a little bit dicey at first. And then, competition is good.
Yeah.
It kind of pushes you to be better.
Right.
And so I think that, I'm just happy for him and his family for his success. And then, over the years, I just think about all of the sous chefs that have come up, and Brian at Paramount, and they opened El Barrio. I mean, there's just there's Brick and Tin. There are so many of folks that were just kind of like little brothers to me.
Right.
And I'm proud of that.
You should be. I mean, that's and you really did create the food scene in Alabama. I mean, in a lot of ways. I want to switch gears because I'm fascinated by this. Polo, horses. How did all of that, did you grow up with horses?
No, I didn't. My best buddy, Joe Culpepper, had a farm, and he had a couple of horses that we would put a rusty bit and bridle on them, and we would ride bareback some. And that was, I didn't do that seriously until after a few years, and Highlands was open, and on a Sunday I would go up, and I got a horse, and Copper was used for endurance races in Bankhead Forest, and so she would go 25 and 50 miles, and she was a little out of control, and so I thought I needed to start taking riding lessons, and so I took dressage and jumping lessons, and then a buddy of mine was playing polo, and he said, come up to Florence, and I want you to get on a couple of my horses. And I did, and I was bitten by this. I'm not a fisherman. I didn't have a lot of other hobbies. I played tennis, but to be on a horse was kind of like being a warrior. I mean, it was like football. You're going to smash into other people and horses, and you're going to try to get the line and ride like hell to get to the ball. And it was, cowboys and Indians.
Right.
And so a couple of my friends brought me into their little world, and then we would go to Point Clear to play, and Florence and Atlanta, and then for the last 10 or 12 years, it's been Aiken. And so I had 7 horses, and Freddie Villar was my farm manager, former polo pro. And it was an incredibly wild and fun and exciting ride, and I'm glad I've lived and I've had plenty of injuries, but it's.
Are you still competing?
I'm not competing. Last year was my last year, and I'm still riding. I still have 6 horses. A couple are in retirement, but the back doesn't bounce quite like it used to.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. My daughter has. We've gone from 3 lessons a week to dressage, traveling to Tryon. We're in Aiken all the time.
Oh, yeah.
We're now at eventing.
She's doing eventing?
She's doing
you
eventing.
Talking about, polo players can kind of brag about how tough and dangerous their sport is, but eventers are next level.
She got bored. I'm not surprised. We did 3 seasons of dressage, and she got bored. Yeah. We're now this is our first year in eventing. She actually in Georgia right now, just finished up a show. Eventing is, I'll just say as the dad who's watching the thing, it's a whole different level, man.
Yeah.
It's exhilarating,
yeah.
But I mean, the crash vest and it's serious business. Right. We now have 2 horses. There's been rumor of a farm. So I feel like I'm headed down the same road, maybe a different sport, but
well, there's a magic with horses. They give their all.
They do. So your daughter Maria's in Charleston, and she's in the wine business.
Yeah.
Will she ever come be a part of Bottega? And is that? I mean, as you look out into the future, would passing those restaurants on to her, or is that something you think about?
Well, actually, her little brother Weston is in.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
In
okay.
that role. I'm sorry you didn't meet him this weekend, but Weston is in that direction, and he went to Swanee and went to the University of Florida grad school in sustainable development. Thought he was going into the coffee world, and then did his presentation of why we should hire him as our sustainability director. And so now he's a partner, and so I couldn't be happier. But Marie is about to open her 3rd Baba's in Charleston.
Of course.
And they've bought the property and doing the big redo now.
Mm-hmm.
And so her husband, Edward, is super talented chef.
He is. He's great.
And then Marie, with her incredible palate and her wine savvy, a dad couldn't be any more proud of their 2 children than I am of Marie and Weston.
I love that. I hope Maddie, 2 of my investors' kids work in the company now. And Maddie has the personality for it. She's currently in the no way am I ever working in the restaurant industry, but we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. That's a neat feeling to think that, some of our restaurants, Oak Steakhouse is 20 years old.
Wow.
and Oku is 15 and Ndako is 13, and they show no signs of slowing down, which thank the Lord.
Yeah.
How important, beyond family, do you think mentorship is? As you the restaurant industry has changed so much. Just in my 35 years, but you have an even longer view. It's a very different industry. I think in some ways, people have never gone out to dinner more. How important is it? What do you for the kid walking in the back door of Chez Fonfon or working for the Swiss chef who they don't work for free anymore. We can't do that. The labor laws and that's probably a good thing, but how important is it, and how is it different working your way up in a kitchen now?
Well, we went through this period where culinary schools were so important, and
Right.
and they still are, and that's a wonderful education. For me, that was not my route. When I came along, the culinary schools I don't think were particularly strong, and what I was after was much. I'm the history, the culture of food and cooking, I dig deep into the libraries, and that's where Richard was such an influence, and Jeremiah Tower and Alice, and they were unbelievably curious about, okay, we've got this trout from Big Sur, and it's packed with laurel leaves, and we're going to poach it, and we're going to take the skin back, and then we're going to make this chervil compound butter and reduce the fume that it was poached in and swirl that in and sauce that. And that kind of beauty is of creating art that is food for function. I'm not into performance art at all. I'm not really into molecular cooking. And I love the sensual joy of eating beautiful, wonderful food. And I think that maybe that's the mentoring that can happen in a kitchen where a young person can see that excitement in that process of knowing the ingredients, of searching the best farmers, and to work with them to create something that's going to provide a bit of happiness. And there's love in that, and there is an attention to detail, and there's care. And to me, that's this transcendental kind of transformation of just cooking something to making something that can be an element of beauty and can be an element of love.
Just keep talking. Frank Stitt, ladies and gentlemen. Wow. I'm so inspired by your passion. Will you, at this stage in life, would you do a new concept? Would you do a new restaurant? Is that something you've thought about?
No, I think that to be present in the three restaurants is sufficiently it consumes me and my desire for creativity, and so no, I'm not, no.
Okay. Just curious.
Yeah.
I'm sure we all find different outlets in different ways. So I didn't know if there was something you still felt like you wanted to say, create. Certainly you can do them within the confines of your three restaurants. But.
Yeah. I do think that it's fun to do, say we will do these pop-ups of Amalfi nights. We're doing some at Bottega,
right.
And there'll be, Weston come up with a great spritz that's kind of very vermouth forward, and maybe there'll be some inspiration of a dish that perhaps Partisan and I had in Mallorca. And to me, the Mediterranean and golly, we were in Switzerland this summer. I want to travel to the rest of the Alps and Annecy, and to go back to Vienna, and sometimes maybe to share, a little taste of a particular cafe in Vienna or Venice, and to share those are things that maybe I'm still I want to share those, but it doesn't have to be a new bricks and mortar.
Yeah. It's interesting. I was speaking with Hunter Lewis earlier today, and we were talking about the importance of curiosity, which is what that was a God-given gift for me. I even when I was a assistant manager, I would max credit cards out to go to Italy, to go even London.
Yeah,
Indian
love
food,
London.
Indian food in London was a revelation to me. How important do you? We do an annual leadership conference, and it's in February, and actually the title this year will be Curiosity. How important do you think that is in our industry?
Well, I think it's ultimately the inspiration that if you the curiosity of Glenn Roberts at Anson Mills.
Love Glenn.
To to go into this deep dive of grains, of rice, of sea island peas, and then for us as cooks, as restaurateurs, to take that little bit of knowledge and to be curious enough to say, wow, well, what were they doing in Venice in the 1700s that maybe we should know about? And so, you know, for me in that study of philosophy, especially with a great professor, Bert Dreyfuss at UC Berkeley, there was this pursuit of knowledge that I think is all wrapped around curiosity. And so I think that that's the inspiration that we have as humans. Yeah.
I am so perpetually curious, and it has served me very, very well. You mentioned Vienna, so I want to go to Vienna. I don't even really know why I want to go. I know nothing. I have this image of me seeing an opera in Vienna. So you would recommend Vienna as a city to go to?
Yeah.
Okay.
Stay at the Soccer Hotel, and right across the street is the great opera house and the great palace and the greatest stables probably on the planet are there. And so they have the most gorgeous marble troughs for the horses to drink. And you know, those guys in the Spanish riding school, you know, with their chamois pants so that they don't use stirrups, and that there is this kind of lifelong relationship they have with their horses, and it's just a phenomenal. And there's the Black Cat Schwartz something or other, this cool restaurant that you would love.
Okay.
That
Shelby, are you listening to all that?
Yeah. So and there is this Saturday market where the most incredible vinegars and food, and there's DJs spinning where you go to this cafe and get the incredible breakfast. It's just a very cool scene.
I love it. You've sold me. Yeah. So I have some questions that I ask all of our guests, but what is, before I get to that, you've accomplished so much. What are you most proud of? You know, are you aware of the effect you've had on Southern food? Let me start with that.
No, I don't think so. I don't really contemplate that. You know, my mother was an incredible cook, and she expressed her love for life through food. And her parents were farmers, and I used to watch her dad milk a Jersey cow, and my grandmother would gather the eggs, and she would ask me to come out and pick asparagus, and she would dry apples for making apple butter. And so those memories of a child in Coleman and that farm, and what I've been able to do through cooking in these restaurants, and to pass it on to my kids, to Weston and Marie, and to all of the people that have worked with us for all of these years. You know, I think that I kind of forgot what the question was, but I think that those are the things that I'm proud of. And I think that for some people that have been transformed by the care, and again, there is a pursuit of authenticity that is just sincerity and it's honesty and it's love. And I think that these are the forces that, you know, I want to be aligned with. And sometimes that can rub off. You know, I think about Jerry Martha, who has a Big Spoon ice cream company here. Yeah. And she's just brilliant. And she's just expanding her curiosity and creativeness. And I think that she is somebody that was this just incredibly open person that our restaurants influenced her to go in her own path. So I think that's where you and I ultimately will, maybe think of as successful, in that we have been inspirational to some people.
I feel such a privilege to lead. I talk a lot about leadership as an act of service.
Yeah.
And it's humbling for me in a way that I've created a company where we're very, very explicit in our culture and our values, in this pursuit of, I want to leave the industry better than I found it. And it compels me every day. I always say I want to be the leader my team deserves. And it's just I feel so privileged to be in a position where people trust me. Mm-hmm. Okay, the rapid fire questions,
okay,
and then we'll get you on your way, Frank. What does the word hospitality mean to you?
Hospitality, I think about my mother always having some extra food in case a friend or somebody dropped by. There was always a welcome, a real, please join us, sit down at our table. Hospitality is anticipating what someone might want or need, and it's sharing that in a way that makes your guest feel very cared for. Hospitality is, the energy that you bring to your guest, and that, whether it's subconscious or conscious, that they recognize that they're being cared for.
As you look forward, what's your hope for hospitality in 2026, just as an industry?
For some reason, I think about people that are rude and don't let you in traffic when they could. Wouldn't set them back just to do a little act of kindness. But I think that little act of kindness is something that doesn't happen a lot, and I think that it can be just as easy to be kind and considerate, and I think that part of teaches people to, when they're on the phone, to have a smile. And I think that, that we all can learn from that and be reminded of that. And there's a kind of a gentle welcome that you feel when you're with old friends, and that you don't have to perform, but that you want to share maybe something that you found. Maybe it's a persimmon, and hey, man, try this.
Right.
And, yeah.
I love that. What are you afraid of at this point in life in your career? You've accomplished so much. Anything keeps you up at night about our industry, or anything that keeps Frank Stitt up about Frank Stitt?
I think that if I don't recognize fear very much, and if it, I really do want, my father is a surgeon. He was very demanding. And I hope that I can have great expectations for people around me, people that I care about, but that I can have some tenderness. But I just hope that we don't lose our curiosity, our desire to be curious. I think that when you're, again, it's this pursuit of good things, of trying to be honest and honorable and truthful. I think that those are elements that that we can help, and that's what you do with a lot of your work.
Yeah.
And I think that maybe that is about mentoring a little bit more. This morning I was mentoring some of the UAB Birmingham cooks, their chef, because we're going to teaching them how to do a few dishes that they're starting tomorrow, and wow, and we did this at the UAB hospital, and so maybe by us sharing some of those things, that some of that love, it's almost like Dostoevsky, can go out into the world and create more love.
I love that. Last question. So I wrote a book called Say Grace. It's the name of the podcast. I've heard lots of definitions for grace. One of them is a gift freely given without expectation of return. But grace for me, in a lot of ways, it reminds me of being a kid at the Southern table, especially when Mimi, my grandmother, was there. We would all hold hands, and she would pick one of the grandkids to say grace, and that was a big honor. But really what we were saying was what we were thankful for. So what are you thankful for?
I'm thankful for that kitchen table, for that table that I shared with my grandparents and my parents. I'm thankful for my mother who shared with me her love of cooking and how she wanted to share in a selfless way. And I'm thankful for that demanding excellence that my father shared with me.
I love that. Well, we have a gift for you, Frank. This is from our friends at Smithy in Charleston. It's a cast iron.
Oh, I love cast iron.
And we engraved your name on the back of it.
Oh, wow. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you for being here, Frank. Thank you for the contribution you've made to all of us. It is beautiful and succinct, and just appreciate you. Thank you for being willing to be on the show today.
It's great being with you.
Thank you.
Indeed.
Thank you, friend. And that was an amazing episode of Say Grace. If you like what you heard, please like, follow, subscribe, share with a friend, and we'll see you next time. Thank you so much. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Say Grace, Food for Thought and Hospitality. We hope you join us next time as we continue to dive deeper into the inspirational stories about the transformative power of hospitality.